Hello and welcome, Just a Family, to giving you something to talk about, or giving just a live TV is what I like to call it. Please like and subscribe to the show. Wherever you're watching or listening from, please subscribe, sign up for the newsletter, comment, let us know that you're watching with us. If you're catching the replay, let me know you're catching the replay. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about healthy communication. So less interruptions, less strife, less stress when you have healthy communication. And talking with me about that is my co-host of the day, Robyn McTague. Is that how you say it?
Very good. Yes, that's perfect.
Ooh, good job, me. Pat me on the back here. Okay. Feel free to introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners.
I'm Robyn McTague, and I help people understand who they really are, so that they can have the life of choice and have the healthy life that they want, including communication, relationships, have a way of understanding what's important to them so they can move towards what they want.
Absolutely. That's hugely important, right? Like it says in the title, healthy communication. Like if you don't have healthy communication, and I think a fair size in society does not have healthy communication. A lot of the fights between partners, a lot of the fights between family and children, or even family in general, 99% of your relationships, if there's arguments or strife or stress in those relationships, majority of that comes down to whether or not you have healthy communication. And people just don't understand what that is. So what's healthy communication? What does that look like for you?
So for me, what it is taking responsibility for what we believe, what we think, who we are, so that we can have firm boundaries and we're not pulled in by everyone else, so that we can say what's important to us and that other person can do that as well. And we can do that in a respectful way, because what happens is we just bring up those patterns from our childhood, and we know that parenting doesn't come with a classroom to help us to understand how to do that in a respectful and a less emotionally charged way. So I know for myself, I grew up with a rageaholic, alcoholic dad. So I shut down my communication. I didn't even communicate with myself. Yeah. And my mom was mentally ill and suicidal, so she didn't communicate at all either. And so I didn't have any role models to actually first understand what I needed, how I felt, and then express it in a way that was safe.
Yeah. No, I understand that. The other thing too is not even the other thing with your situation with parents or peers or siblings who really are reactive. It's hard to learn healthy communication. I know in my own household, I remember this one situation where I was at my aunt's house and I was frustrated with her. She was frustrated with me. I was sitting on the floor and crying, and she walked past me and said something, and I said, "Oh, geez." And she thought I had told her to go F herself. And I'm like, no, like I didn't even say that. I literally just huffed and kind of went like, "Oh, geez." And I think I was maybe 12, 13 at that point. I wasn't cursing. I wasn't swearing. There wasn't any intention of offense behind what I was saying. I was releasing my own energy, right? And trying to voice my frustrations. And yeah, it was ridiculous.
And that's the problem. We're not honest. We think that we have to, and that was one of the things I learned. You walk on eggshells and figure out what the other person needs, and is it okay to say this? And so we shut down that part of ourselves that we trust. And when we can build that trust within, then we can start to do it out there. But how often do we see relationships where, especially in the dating world, we change our behavior for that other person? And we don't say, "Oh, I really don't want to go to that restaurant," or "I don't want to do this," or and so we're playing what people call a game, because it's not our true selves. And then when that comes down and then we see each other for what we are, then it's harder to accept them, because it's like we build up this idea of who this person is, and we're looking from our own lens rather than seeing them as someone who sees things differently and being able to embrace those differences.
For sure. I created this document a while ago in my own coaching practice, right? Where it was the seven ways we're damaging our relationships. And one of the 7 was not listening. It was literally not listening. And there's 3 different ways to listen. And this is part of communication, right? If you're going to communicate, you need to be able to listen as well. There's 3 different types of listening. One being you're listening just to it like in one ear, out the other, right? You're not even listening to what the person's saying. You're just listening to make them feel validated, but you're not actually paying attention, right? Then there's the second one where you're listening and you're paying attention, but your version of listening is you're hearing what you want to hear. You're hearing the inflection that you want to hear. So like my aunt, right? Where I said, oh, geez, she heard what she wanted to hear because she wanted to continue the argument. She didn't want to hear what I was saying to validate or understand what I was trying to say. Now, the third one is actually listening and hearing what the other person is feeling, what their belief is, how are they communicating to you that you need to process it from their aspect, not just putting your own beliefs and your own intention and your own emotionally charged whatever it is that you're feeling at that point in that moment, but listen to actually hear and understand what that person is trying to tell you.
Yeah, or so often we're listening and we're actually figuring out what we're going to say. So we're not actually listening to them. It's like our ego gets involved and it's like, how is this affecting me? So this is where we need to build the empathy skills to see how other people are feeling and understand that. Because if I'm just thinking from my perspective and what I'm going to say and how it's affecting me, there's no place for that place of empathy and compassion, because it's never going to work, because we have that specific way of looking at it. So, presence has become almost a meme these days, but it really is true. In any of these things that are out there, there's some kernel of truth to it. So the more that we can stay present and breathe through that and really accept ourselves, that's when I can have the opportunity to listen to you and hear what you have to say without being defensive, without figuring out what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah. I apologize if anybody's hearing the banging in the background. My cats are losing it throughout the house right now. And I don't know what exactly they're doing, but they're jumping around everywhere. And it's like a stampede in my home right now. And I can hear it, but I'm trying. I hope you guys aren't hearing it. But if you are, well, you're going to have to deal with it because I can't really do anything about it at this point. I agree. My biggest thing in communication is intention. Everything that I do in communication is intention. And that for me comes down to, say I'm having a discussion with somebody and I say something and they find what I say offensive, right? I'll sit there, and if my intention is to offend you, I'm going to let you know that my intention is to offend you. I'm going to say something or do something that you know that I'm intentionally trying to offend you. But majority of the time, I'm a nice person. I do whatever I can to make other people feel better. I'm an identity coach. Like, I deal with emotions and beliefs 24/7, and I'm constantly thinking about how other people feel. And for me to sit there and say, I'm doing this to offend you, it's not. I have a lot of situations, or I've had a lot of situations with friends, family, relationships, where they'll sit there and they'll be like, what you said offended me. And I'll be like, you know what? I'm sorry. That was not my intention. But how can we make this better going forward? Because one, that wasn't my intention. not only on my part, but both parts of a conversation. You need to be clear with your intentions of the things that you're saying, the actions, because communication comes down to not only verbal words, but energy, emotions, actions, your physical mannerisms. Communication comes down to many different forms. So if I'm sitting there like this, right, you can know that my intention is either I'm thinking about what you're saying, but I'm annoyed, or what have you, right? I may be just sitting here comfortable. It is, you never know. But don't assume that when somebody's talking to you that their intention is to offend, or that their intention is to fight with you. I always, my daughter the other day huffed at me, and she was just wandering around the kitchen. She was huffing. She was in a bad mood. She had a bad day at school. And I said, "What's going on?" "Nothing." And I turned around and I said, "Listen," I said, "the only reason that you will huff around anybody else is because you want acknowledgement of how you're feeling, or you want to talk about how you're feeling." I said, "If you would like to huff and don't want to talk about how you're feeling, then you need to go where there's nobody around. Go to your room where it's quiet, it's your safe space, and go huff in there all you want. But I'm not going to come in there and ask you what's wrong." I said, "If you would like me to acknowledge the fact that you're huffing and we can have a conversation, then let's do that." But my family is horrible for that. And I remember growing up, even my brothers were like that. They would huff or or sigh or comment at the TV. And you know that they want attention.
Yeah, it can be attention. It's also a way that we learn to be passive aggressive. And we see this in a lot of different ways in society, right? And so what happens is we stuff down our emotions, and then there's a blow up. We see it with road rage, all these different things. So those frustrations can build into resentments and then anger. And then this is when we have the really unhealthy extremes and everything in between, right? And like you said, it's like not taking it personally. They're having their experience, you're having yours, you're setting your good intention. And then what happens is we make assumptions. And one of the big pieces for me, I always remember from my conflict resolution training, was all behavior makes sense. Be curious. So to that person, it makes sense to them in their mind. So if I can be curious and maybe ask a few questions, or just like you did with your daughter, what's going on? What's happening in your world right now?
Yeah. I like to think I have road rage, and not to the point where I'm going to like pull over and scream at somebody, but I'll be driving my car and I'll be like, "What are you doing?" And just like yelling at people in the middle of the driveway, because to me, they're driving like that. Right. And I'm not necessarily mad at them. I'm frustrated with the situation, but there's healthy road rage. I like to say, like, I'm a healthy aggressive. I will get defensive, but for the most part, but my husband hates it. My husband hates it because my version of communication with my husband, especially when I'm angry, is I'm volatile. I am absolutely and utterly, and I wholeheartedly will admit this, I am volatile and vindictive. If you do something that I turn around and I feel defensive, or I feel backed into a corner where I have to defend myself, or whatever situation that I feel trapped or I feel hurt, my instinct is to then turn around and do everything I can to hurt you. And in that moment, I don't care what your feelings are. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you mean to me. I don't care about anything but making you feel the way that I now feel. And I grew up I've always been a very reactive person. So for me, I had to learn, and I started this with my husband. That's probably why we've been together now for 14 years. But I started this with him, where if I'm feeling that I'm getting to that point and I can't have a healthy conversation, I will turn around and I'll say, "Listen, I need you to leave me alone for right now. I need to walk away so that I don't say or do anything that is going to hurt you, because I don't want to do that." So I make my intention clear. And whether that takes me an hour, whether that takes me 8 hours or 24 hours, whatever that may be, I need time to process and calm down.
And that's wonderful self-understanding, right? And that's what's so important. So that's really great. And you have that communication to let that person know. And how
now, this is where people, I wholeheartedly, and I'll repeat it, I wholeheartedly admit that that's the way I am, for sure, because I love that about myself. Do you know why? I'm assuming you probably know why I love that about myself.
Well, it's who you are. It's, it's just part of who you are. And so it's your way of expressing. And if it's not harming someone else, and if you can address it healthily, then that's great, because we don't learn to deal with anger in a healthy way in our society. It's one of the biggest issues, I would say. Look at prisons, look at everything else. And when different projects go into the prisons and talk to people and help them to understand that there is that moment before the explosion of the anger, and that they actually have choice in that moment, that's a real aha for a lot of people. They don't realize, and especially, it's changing a bit, but there's still a lot of pressure on men in our society, the males, to be a certain way and not express feelings. And, that's why I love some of my communities with the enneagram and the meditation, because those men are allowing themselves to have their feelings and learning to do it in a healthy way. And that was, I repeated the pattern in the marriage that I had. Looked different on the outside, wasn't a drinker, all these other things, very athletic, and had that same anger thing where it'd be a cycle. And so it was like stuff down the feelings and then have a huge blow up, like an annual thing. It was like something that happened, and didn't go to the anger management classes, didn't choose to pursue that. So we went our separate ways. But I think it's one of the most, grief and anger, I would say, are the two biggest emotions in our society that we don't address directly and in a way to teach people how to deal with them, so that we can have the healthy communication, because all those feelings underlying everything all the time and can cause problems because they're not being addressed and acknowledged.
Absolutely. It's interesting how many people allow those emotions and allow those instincts to kick in, or even take control would be a better word on that. For me, I like those emotions because not only do I know how to control them, I know they're a part of who I am, but I know that if I ever needed to be that person or that version of myself, I have access to it, right? I can call on that volatility, that vindictiveness, if in a heartbeat, if I needed to, and absolutely defend myself or take care of my family, right? I'm not going to say that all of us have these situations, but there is the potential for these situations where we need to protect ourselves. If somebody backs you into a corner and is trying to mug you, okay, yes, for the most part, give them what they want and let them walk away, right? But you have to be able to fight back, and you have to be able to take charge of those situations. If you don't know how to take charge of your emotions, your thoughts, your energies, you're going to freeze.
Yeah. And so I would reframe that a bit to say that you're not necessarily vindictive, but that you're tapping into the correct healthy anger, like mother bear energy. Mm-hmm. And there's a righteous rage. Yeah.
And I was looking at it more of an all encompassing. I was thinking of the shadow side, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people think that negativity and your shadow side are bad, and it's not. That's the side that helps you with courage. That's the side that helps you with protection and making sure that you stand up for yourself. It's part of your confidence. All of that comes from your shadow side.
Yeah. What happens, why it's shadow, is because we're not acknowledging it. So it's the acknowledgement of it and what that original positive intention was. So yeah, not to be afraid of it for sure.
Mhm. So healthy communications, what do you think the biggest points of healthy communications are?
One is to see if you're in the emotionality or emotion, right? Emotionality is just what you were talking about when it overpowers us. So we're not going to have a proper discussion about anything. And when we're in that emotionality and can't even manage ourself. So that self-regulation is so important, and understanding how we react to things and being open to that feedback loop from ourselves. So checking in with ourselves and what do you need, that self-care, so that those resentments and other things don't build up. So not making the assumptions, being honest, and being open to listen. And we call that in the counseling field, the active listening, right? Where we can actually, we don't want to parrot it back, but we want to express it back to understand what they're saying. So for example, with you, it's like, oh, so when you express your anger and have that kind of big energy, that's really important to you because that's really a part of yourself. And then you can say yes or no, and then we can sort out if I didn't really understand you, then we can have that discussion. I think one of the biggest things is how vested are you in the relationship? So if it's a marriage that you really want to work through, then you're going to have more willingness to work through it. Or maybe you see it as it's not working for you anyway, and you walk away and you have, it's kind of like using it as an excuse, but then you're never really dealing with that underlying problem. And then you're just going to repeat that pattern. So that's what we see with everything, including communication. In times of high stress, we revert back to what we learned in our family. So if the relationship and communication was bad there, we're going to go back there. Yeah. So it's like learning those skills when we're in the proper frame of mind, and then we can pull on them that much quicker. And it's all about being present with ourselves and our body, and not thinking about the past or the present and bringing that in, like, what do we need to deal with now? And to me, those are the biggest things. And then you can go into the more nuanced things around the languaging you use and the I statements. So you're not blaming other people, you're talking about what's going on for you, and then inviting a discussion. So we're not just blabbing everything and expect them to just hold it all.
Yeah.
And I would say the other thing is sometimes we have a lot of high expectations of people that love us, that we want them to be everything for us, and they can't be. So this is why counseling and other processes are so important. Like when I did the cancer support, when I had breast cancer, and these women were in a very fragile state, but to burden their family, who are already highly stressed because of what was going on, wasn't really appropriate. So having another outlet where we can have those discussions, finding the support that you need outside of your particular groups, whether it's family or something else, I think is a huge thing we can do as well.
Absolutely. So my favorite 7, I guess I have 7. And I mentioned this earlier about my 7 ways you may be destroying your relationships. I love this one. And I give this to everybody because it is super important. My number 1 is making it all about you. Making things all about how you're feeling, or how you did mention that. And it is important to remember that you can only speak for yourself. But when you're having a discussion and you're listening to somebody else talk, what they've done, what they're doing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what they're saying is not all about you. And that's what I mean about that one. It's not all about you. If somebody if you have plans with your partner or a friend or a coworker, and you have plans, and that person last minute messages you and says, you know what, I really can't. I can't. And you get offended because they've stood you up. You don't know what's going on with that other person. You don't know if that person has crippling anxiety and has to fight themselves tooth and nail just to leave the house. You don't know the scenario that person's going through. Maybe, even they have to go to the bathroom. They can't leave their house because they have to go to the bathroom. You never know what somebody else is going through or what they're feeling or what their intention is. So not making it all about you and making it, oh, I'm offended because you're not doing this, or, I did majority of the work, or it's not all about you. You don't know what that other person's situation is. Not listening, I already talked about, and I mentioned that at the beginning of the episode where, the listening to actually hear, listening to validate another person, listening because you actually want to understand what somebody is trying to tell you. Speaking from anger, this is a big one. And this is the one where I say that I need time. I need time to process. Because again, when I speak from anger, I'm reacting. You mentioned reaction, and you mentioned not, I just lost that thought. But speaking
Just
from
taking the time,
taking the time to process how you're feeling. There is a huge difference between a reaction and a response. And communication is your number one place that you need to learn reaction versus response. A reaction is an emotional reaction to something that's happened or something that's been said. A response is a logical. That's where you're not emotionally charged. You're not offended for no reason. You're actually having a discussion, and you're responding to something that has been happening or said or what have you in a calm, logical way. Speaking from anger, you're going to hurt that other person, and you can't take that back. I don't know how many times I've said things in relationships that I can't take back. Mm-hmm. That doesn't go anywhere. It's like the nail in a wall. And this is for anybody who is like, who's like the way I used to be, or has the potential to be like me. You put 15 nails in a piece of wood. You take those nails out. That's your apology, right? So those nails are words that you've said to somebody, hurtful words that you've said to somebody. And now you go to apologize.
Yeah, but that
you take those nails. Yeah, you take those nails out. The holes are still there. So your apology smooths things over, but the damage is still done. That's speaking out of anger. Too many expectations. Oh, definitely. Too many expectations. It is, and I'm going to lovingly say this, it is nobody else's responsibility to make sure that you are happy. That is an internal, personal journey. It is not my husband's responsibility to make sure that I am happy and healthy every day. While he reminds me that I need to eat every day because he wants me not to get sick, it is not his responsibility to force feed me. Right? Everything that we do, it's not somebody else's responsibility. I'm not happy because you did this. Well, that's not my responsibility. While my intention wasn't to make you unhappy, it's not my responsibility. Doing the dishes. I heard a story a few years ago of a couple, and the husband and wife had dinner every night. The wife made dinner every night, and she asked her husband every night to do the dishes. And he said, absolutely, but I'll do them in the morning. And their marriage was at the point of breaking. Now, this is all hearsay because I heard this third party. I didn't hear this from the actual couple. So let's just hypothetical on this one. Their marriage was just about done because of this thing. And they ended up working with somebody, and the person that they were working with said, why is it such a big deal that he not do the dishes in the morning? And she said, well, when he doesn't do the dishes after we're done eating, and I've spent all this time working on it, I feel offended and disrespected that he didn't find value in what I've done.
Yeah, and that's an assumption.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Expectations and assumptions are huge. Taking more than you give. Communication. You need to be giving just as much as you take in a healthy communication. It's not just one way or another. Communication. That goes with expectations. If you communicate what your expectations are, you get an answer. If that is good enough for them, not good enough for them, but not expecting that it's going to happen that way. Does that make sense? I think I went a little bit on a tangent on that little aspect.
Yeah, because it's about, again, how we receive it, right? And not taking things personally, because this is what I'm prepared to do. And this is where you have your starting point. And this is when, boundaries are so important. Most people I work with I didn't either. I had to learn what boundaries were. So this is where we either give too much or too little, or we, burn ourselves out. But it's like, if I have my healthy boundaries and that person does, I can say what I'm prepared to do, what I have capacity for, and that other person can respond from what's important to them. So in that couple's case, it's like, I'm too tired at night to do that. I'm feeling fresher in the morning. I'm a morning person. That's when I can do it. Can we have you not be in the kitchen at night so you don't see it till I get it done? Like bringing in some, and then we can work together. And that's, I think, the biggest piece for me is like really looking at it as a team. When we have a healthy communication pattern, then we can really build the teams. And that's what I love to do with the small businesses too, right? When we understand each other, what's important to each of us, then we can build together. But if we're doing it from hidden resentments and expectations and projecting onto that person, which was what happened with that couple, she's projecting that thing onto him, it's not going to go anywhere.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Businesses, right? You were just saying working with small businesses. That same goes with anywhere that you are employed or that you own a business or work with other people. Any situation where you work with other people, healthy communication is big on that too. You're going to have coworkers who don't like their life, don't like their job, don't like you, don't like the work, whatever it may be. And you need to understand how to communicate healthy with those people. So again, not taking offense to what they're saying. You don't know what's going on in their life. You can only control the words, the actions, the energy that's coming out of your body. So question, right? If you're having trouble with somebody at work, question why. Say, did I do something? Are you okay? Do you need anything? How can I make this easier for us to work together?
And I think the advantage in the workplace, and really, if you look at any system, it goes back to our family. You'll see the same dynamics in your workplace, unless you've worked through them, as you did in your family. And this is sometimes a big aha for people to see these patterns. And that's what I love to do, is look at patterns. And people have more expectations of the workplace, so they bring them false selves, right? We moved in Maslow's hierarchy of needs to self-actualization when we take care of all of the safety needs and all of that. So people are wanting more from work, and they're wanting more relationship. They're wanting to build things more. And there's way more people who are entrepreneurs or, solopreneurs or that kind of thing. But at some point, they're going to bring other people in, whether it's to collaborate, whether it's a team member. And if we're so stuck in thinking the one way, and we're going to hire people or work with people that think the same as us, we're missing out on the full range. And that's the other thing, is we miss out on the joy of learning about other parts of both ourselves and other people. And to me, that's what I love to see, is that really building a team and really building a connection. So if I'm going to work with you long term, I would do some of the different things that I do, different assessments and stuff, and see, what are your skills? What are your things that you love to do? What do I do? If neither of us have the director, for example, and want to take responsibility, we're not going to get things done. And if we're both really high, how do we work together to not feel that I need to take more control or you? So there's all sorts of ways that we can do that and really function in a much better way, in a healthier way.
Yeah, I agree. Work can be stressful. Any relationship can be stressful when there isn't that healthy communication. Mm-hmm. And while we'll never, I know that you had created a title for the show, and I've had a couple of my guests create titles for the show while we're booking it and all of that. I end up tweaking them, of course. But today I was looking through your title, and I thought about putting it, and I decided against it. And the only reason I decided against it was because we generally don't. Having a stress-free life, to me, is unattainable. We can have less stress, and we can learn how to maneuver through stress and work through stress and cope with stress. But there's always going to be things that come up that either, whether you're in the spiritual realm or the mental or psychological realm, there's always going to be things that come up, no matter how old you are, no matter where you are in your life stages, that are going to create stressful situations for you. So I didn't want to put that in there, that we would have a stress-free life. Stress less, absolutely, but not stress-free, because having healthy communication, while it will help with those disagreements, it'll help with knowing where people are at, and it'll help with your emotional well-being and your physical well-being and energetic. It's not going to remove all of the stress from your life.
Well, we have to have some stress. Like I studied psychology, right? And we talk about, and same with, I do thought field therapy, the tapping. So it's like having that cylinder. And so it's like, if it gets to that overflowing point, then we have too much. But there's kind of a happy medium or a place where we need it to function. Otherwise, we're not going to do anything. And we see that in the animal world too. And basically, we're animals in many ways. So it's like having that, there's the stress, but when we have tools, when we have ways to address it, then to me, that is the stress free or whatever you want to call it. So it's like, when I feel myself going into that stress mode, it's like, it means to me, I'm not present. I need to take the moment to breathe. What do I need to do in the situation? Like for you, whether it's to say, I need a timeout, whatever it is, right? And having that knowledge of myself and being able to tap into myself to see, what do I need in the moment? To me, that takes that away, because it's like, that's something external to me. Unless it's my life is in danger, then that's something I can deal with in some way.
Yeah. For me, stress, struggle, anything that brings up negative emotions for me is a lesson. It's okay, something's not working. A belief is unaligned, a situation is not agreeing with your life, you're moving past the situation, whatever it may be. That's a nudge for me to say, okay, you need to reevaluate, something's not working or something needs to change. And then you look, okay, what am I stressed about? Well, if it's my relationship, okay, what am I stressed about in the relationship? Do I need to change something? Do I need to change my reaction, my behavior? Do I need to discuss with my partner what needs to change, and go into the details like that? You made a comment earlier about childhood. And when we go back into childhood, I created the 7 mindset pillars. And this is everything for me. The 7 mindset pillars are the 7 most important aspects of anybody's life. Our self, our spirituality, whether you're an atheist, whether you're Christian, spiritual like I am, doesn't matter. So I always have to caveat that one. So self, spirituality, our romantic relationships, our family relationships, our friendships, our career, and our finances. Those are the 7 most important aspects of any person's life. And as we grow from the day we're born, and as we grow and get older, we're picking and creating beliefs to put into those pillars. And as we get older, like you said, we start creating situations that are directly related to those beliefs. If we grew up in a household that taught us that reacting with negative enforcement is the way to do it, we're going to respond that way. We're going to react that way because that's what we were taught. That's when you sit back and start having those, okay, is this me? Is this something I learned? Is this something that I want? How do I change this moving forward?
Yeah, so it begins with that awareness, right? So until we can be aware of what we're doing and see the patterns, then we don't have any option to change it. And that's our personality, right? And that's why I love doing the enneagram work, because we do have ways of seeing the world. Our ego is very strong and wants us to be safe and taken care of. And so we create these patterns of safety or ways of seeing the world. And when we can start to have a glimpse at that and start to pull it apart and say, oh, yeah, maybe I don't have to do it this way anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Any form of stress, struggle, unhappiness is that, hi, I'm here. What do we need to change?
Yeah. And are you being,
and that's where we come in.
Yeah.
Right. That's where your coaches and your healers and your spiritual teachers and psychologists and counselors, whatever it is that you go to, those are your moments to say, hey, how do I deal with this?
Yeah. And I would say the more I learn, and I've been learning for all my life, lifelong learner, is unless we incorporate the body, nothing's going to change. And yes, we need all these things, but we also need to be here physically present. So whether it's just having a simple breath practice or doing something to connect to our body. So talk about the body, the heart, and the head. So we start with the body. And like you say, just having that reminder, that loving partner that says, are you taking care of your body and having something to eat? Right? Those are the things for self-care, because if we don't take care of ourselves first, we can't be here for anyone else. And so important.
I love that. I didn't create it. I think it was Gabby Bernstein that created it, the 15-second breathing technique. And it's my absolute favorite. I know a lot of people who teach meditation, and I fight meditation. I fight the general teaching of meditation in certain ways, but that's a whole nother topic. I love meditation, but I find it in different aspects. So for me, the true purpose of meditation is to relax your emotions so that you can consciously think, relax, you're not supercharged. So for me, the 15-second breathing technique is super simple. It's super easy. You inhale for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, and exhale for 5 seconds. And the physical and emotional transformation you get just from doing that 15 seconds is ridiculous. Yeah. Anybody listening, anybody watching, do 15 seconds. Just inhale for 5, hold for 5, and exhale for 5. And you will feel it in your body.
Yeah, it's called the box breath, and this has been around in psychology for a long time. And so hold again before you start. So that's one. And I would say there's different styles of meditation. So the type I do is active. So you're actually building in tools and techniques to help you with the focus, with dream interpretation, all of those. So, lots of people talk about meditation, and it's about finding the one that's right for you. I did yoga When I was in high school, I did transcendental meditation because of the Beatles. When I was in college, and the one I do now, I've been doing for 21 years and teaching it because it's the one that engages my mind and fits for me.
Oh, I love that. I love that you just said that. So for anyone watching, I'm going to, since we opened the meditation topic for a minute, I'm going to say meditation is whatever you need it to be. The purpose of meditation isn't to clear your mind. That's what I fight. I will fight that tooth and nail. Meditation is to relax your body and your emotions. It's not to clear your thoughts. It's not to make it so that all you do is breathe. You're still going to get the thought downloads. You're still going to get those thoughts running through your head, those emotions, but they're not going to be overwhelming. You're going to be able to look at them in a different perspective. The other thing I want to mention on meditation is the warnings. Not enough people teach the warnings of meditation, and it can do more harm than good if you are not aware. Meditation is great. I don't care who you are, what you're doing. Meditation is great. Everybody should be doing meditation in one form or another. But if you start rocking back and forth, if you start rocking side to side, if you start vibrating, if you feel like an out-of-body experience, do not panic. Those and many other things are capable of happening. It's not scary. You are constantly in control. Meditation is just deep relaxation of your body, your mind, and your energy.
Yeah, and that's why we start with a grounding and bringing in energy. So we're not using personal energy, and a grounding so that you have that, like you say, that ability to take care of yourself. And that's what I love, because to me, it's all about safety and making sure. So
my best friend, and I didn't teach her because somebody else taught her. Somebody else taught her how to meditate. And she was panic and anxiety. She was doing it for that. She will never meditate again, no matter how much. And because it traumatized her, because somebody didn't tell her that this was a possibility.
And her teacher probably maybe didn't have enough skill. Like for us, we train at least 6 years to be able to teach our system. So I'm grounding people. I'm doing the energy work to do that. Yes. So yeah, please be aware. And I had a similar experience when I trained in Reiki, and I was really sensitive. I had breast cancer 22 years ago, and I really opened up to my spirit and energy and just was super open. So I did this class. She did level 1 and 2 in the same day. And I was out in Surrey and I'm in Richmond. So it's like 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers. And she didn't know how to ground us or teach us to ground. I was so sick, I could barely drive home. And I just sat in the bathtub and I just like, oh, and it was an intense experience.
I'm just so everybody knows, I'm going to be debunking spiritual myths on another episode, not today, but on another episode, I will be debunking spiritual myths. I think I did a whole podcast series on that at one point. Anyway, healthy communication. The biggest thing that I'll say, and because we touched on spirituality, is that communication, spirituality, meditate, whatever you're talking about, communication comes down to you as an individual. It is your form of communication. It is your form of understanding. You need to communicate in a way that is healthy and a positive intention for you. You can't control how anybody else is going to react to your communication, but if your intention is pure, you can at least vocalize that.
Yeah. So my biggest takeaway is be curious, whether it's yourself or someone else. That will keep you in good position to stop the projection, to stop the whatever your monkey mind goes into. But just be curious, what's going on with me? What's going on with them? What's going on with the situation? And that opens us up to other possibilities.
Yep. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Right? That's for me, that's the biggest thing. What if I was having a bad day? Would I be acting this way? Would I be talking this way? Would I be in a similar situation? If I was having a bad day or a bad month or a bad life in that moment, and I say bad subjectively, what would I be doing? Would I be reacting this way? Would I be talking this way? Would I be making other people feel this way? Just start thinking of yourself in somebody else's shoes, and you might learn a little bit more about communication in a healthy way.
And I think there's still that part that sometimes we stay too long. I know I did that in certain situations. My enneagram type is about being loyal, and I stayed too long. And in toxic relationships, it takes two people or more to have a relationship. And if it's not serving you and the other person, sometimes the best thing is to walk away. Whether you can come back together later or not, may or may not be. But that's the cycle of life, right? And allow yourself to grieve. You know, this is a relationship. This is something that was in your life, and allow the feelings to grieve and let it go and forgive yourself and the other person so you can move on.
Yes. You are the only other person who I've ever heard say that. And I say it all the time. When a relationship ends, grieve it like a death.
Yeah,
the only difference is that person is still here, which makes it not harder. It doesn't make it harder. It makes it different.
Makes it different. And sometimes we have to see them more. And, you know, if it's a work relationship or maybe dating where you're in the same community, and sometimes maybe you leave, right? We see that with couples. I mean, that was kind of, you know, I moved down to the coast and I didn't have really friends here. And I was with someone for 5 years and it was all their friends. And then when we split up, it's like, oh, I'm on my own. And there was not only the grieving, but the anger and different things. So I just had to allow it all.
Yep. Allow it all to come through for sure. All right. Is there anything else you would like to add for today's episode?
Yeah, the more that we can just allow ourselves to be, you know, so often we're the doing and the being and doing. So what's going on, the expression, and it's that cycle, and allowing ourselves that inner harmony so that we can have it on the external. And that is the communication with ourselves. That's number one. If we can't communicate with ourselves, then we're not going to have a success externally.
Yeah. I think I'd like to add, other people don't know where you're at or what you need if you aren't communicating. That doesn't mean you're putting that on them, but you can healthily vocalize, I need this, or I don't like that. Please don't do this. And vocalize what your needs are. Vocalize and communicate. Your biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? Your voice. Your biggest asset is your voice. That's what I was looking. I was trying to find the word. Your biggest asset is your voice, because you have your voice. You have the ability to speak what's on your mind. You have the ability to speak what you're feeling, to speak what you need, to speak up when you see or feel injustice. You have a voice. Use it.
Yeah. And if you don't know, say that too, right? So often we think we have to know exactly. I'm confused. I don't know. I'm not feeling anything, you know, that's part of it too.
Yep. My husband asked me, speaking of, I know you hear me, honey. He just commented, I hear you. If I'm just zoned out, because sometimes I'm just it's not very often because my mind goes a mile a minute, but sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'm just like not thinking of anything, or my mind goes from one topic to another topic to another topic to another and another and another and another. And he's like, what are you thinking? I'm like, nothing. Like,
just need a time to compress.
Yeah, just let it, yeah, it's just working it out, right? And one time he asked me, how did you get to that? Or why are you thinking about that? That's one of the biggest forms of, or that's like, he'll ask me, why are you thinking that? And I'm like, so it started with this, and then it went to this, and at this, and this, and this. Yeah, sometimes not communicating what's going on in your head is a good idea. Sometimes, but you have that ability, right? You have the voice, you have the capability, you are able to vocalize or not vocalize what you need, what you don't need. You have that choice. You have that power. Not enough people use it.
And if you don't feel you have the power, that's what you need to work on. So to me, there's usually inner child work that needs to happen there to feel safe enough to voice that. So don't make yourself wrong if you feel that you have not fully stepped into your power to say certain things. It's step by step, right? It's like, what's that baby step? How do I need to feel more powerful? How do I need to feel safer? Whatever it is for you, the courage to step to it.
Absolutely. I agree. Sorry, I'm just fixing something over here. I know my husband's going to give me trouble for messing with stuff right now, but I'm going to tell him to bugger off for a second. Because I have to do something. Just give me a minute, my dear. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly reiterate this voice piece, and I'm going to record it for TikTok because why not? We should always be putting TikToks up. So if I'm kind of looking at you, kind of looking at the screen, we're going to try to do both here, but you know, I don't have enough space on my computer. On my desk, I don't have enough space. Okay, so reiterate this, healthy communication. Healthy communication is using your voice because it is, if you believe in God, if you believe in spirit, universe, doesn't matter. It is your God-given right to use your voice. You can make sure that your intention is pure. You can make sure that you are listening and having that healthy communication, listening to what other people say, not just to validate how they're feeling, not just to in one ear, out the other, but to listen, to actually understand where they're at, where they're coming from, and what they need. Using your voice to talk about what you need, what you want, your validation, making sure that you're standing up for yourself. What am I missing? Am I missing anything else?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different things, right? Having healthy boundaries so that you can
healthy boundaries, yes,
keep that communication clear, not projecting onto the other person, not taking things personally.
Yeah.
Being kind to yourself and being curious. And find that compassion for yourself. So often we find it for others, and it's like, what about ourselves? When we're learning things, you know, what's interesting as adults, we expect to go from A to B. But if we look at a child learning to walk, when they plop down, do they stop learning to walk? Nope.
They keep going. Yep.
Right.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah. So communication, you're going to have places where you feel that you could have done it better or different or whatever. And that's okay. It's about not beating yourself up. It's about being kind to yourself and compassionate that you're in learning mode and you'll do better next time. And if you need to, you call up the person and say, hey, I didn't like how that went. Can we kind of have a do-over or talk about it and clear the air, whatever it is?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Robyn. I really enjoyed this episode. I think that communication is something that people need to understand and learn how to do properly, how to do respectfully, and how to do with self-love in mind, because saying anything, doing anything, you loving yourself enough to either keep your mouth shut or open your mouth, one of the two, is ridiculously important. And I thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
Well, thank you for having me. That was lots of fun.
You're very welcome. So, Just Alive family, if you are catching the replay, if you've watched the live, if you are listening to the podcast, please like, subscribe, and share to whatever platform you're catching this on. We are always looking for guest co-hosts, guest bloggers, featured topics, and of course, sponsors, because, well, it pays to run a talk show. So lots of love. Connect with me. My inbox is always open, and I will see you on the next episode. Thanks, Robyn.
Bye.
Bye.